Hello, 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 hello. Monetization on. Into the control room. Live chat. Potentially. We're potentially back. I don't know. Have to wait to see who else shows up. My connection reestablished like right after the time limit where OBS just decides to cut it off. Because OBS will usually end the that particular stream if you've gone, I think, 30 seconds without a connection. So it just reached that limit. It was like 31 seconds. So it shut the stream down, and then my internet connection restored literally 1 second after the time limit. So whoever's there, obviously, let me know if you can hear me. We get 5 people back. We'll wait. Anybody there that can hear me? I mean, is my yes, OBS is picking up my audio, supposedly at least. But is YouTube receiving my audio? Okay, I'm going to trust Nebraska and assume that YouTube is receiving my audio. And I'll chug some water. Ugh. Yeah, I saw one of those final comments. Someone made a joke that like China or Xi Jinping was listening. I would like to believe that actually, because that would mean that I'm like a relevant channel or something. And if I was a relevant channel, I would be making like some kind of livable income. But unfortunately, that's not the case, uh, or at least not yet. I don't know. Maybe I'll retitle this part later or something. I'll title it like Xi Jinping shut down my first stream or something. Got 5 out of 20 people who were there. All right. We're gonna wait a couple minutes and see, just a few minutes and see how many else show up. If my internet did that already once, I will warn you guys. There's a chance it will do it again. As like a most of you know, I'm not actually in Alaska where I belong. I unfortunately am stuck living down in the lower 48 U.S. Because I lost my job because I got 2020'd by 2020. And so I have to live with my family now. And I've been down here for the last like 3 years. And the internet infrastructure down here is not good. Whereas like the internet infrastructure back up home in Fairbanks is excellent. It has to be because the strategic military bases in Alaska rely on it. So we that's one thing we don't really have to worry about doing ourselves because the Army and the Air Force like actually make sure that that stuff stays as maximum as possible. Do we have 5 or do we have 4? YouTube, make up your mind. All right, I'll wait a few more minutes. Like I was saying, just as a cutout though, uh, I'm pretty sure China is doing these fake outs, these mass buildups and fake outs and using that opportunity to also actually get some legitimate preparation in. And they've already been practicing mass aircraft sorties. Like they had on several days back in September or August. You may remember had as many as I believe it was like 140 combat aircraft in the air at one time that passed within Taiwan's airspace over the course of a couple of hours. So they are clearly like actually prepping for it. And the question then for me is uh is like how many fake outs are they going to do before they actually go for it? And I don't actually think they can do that many because you can only really do like one big fake out per year. Like Russia did one big fake out in spring of 2021 before they then invaded Ukraine in late winter, early spring of last year. So I don't know if China's going to do like multiple fake outs or if they might go for it as early as this autumn. I don't think they will do it this autumn. I would think they want at least one more fake out to like get some more stuff done covertly, although not covertly because we can see everything with satellites. Install more like SAM systems on their commandeered ferries that they're going to use. I would expect they're going to do at least one more fake out. But now, previously, before the Ukraine stuff, I had said that it would be best for them to wait until about 2027 to conduct the invasion because at their rate of development militarily, that would be about when they would still have personnel wise, they would still have the capable force to do so because of the demographic stuff, and also would be at their most optimum combination of that and their actual force projection capability. Because by then, at the rate that they are constructing their Y-20 aircrafts, which are basically a espionage version of the C-17, by then they should have over 100 Y-20s, which would give them a decent enough strategic airlift fleet to bring in stuff by air if they manage to like even get a decent foothold in Taiwan. Uh, and also by then they would have been able to construct like a better sized amphibious assault fleet. However, now things have changed because also previously the schedule was that we, the U.S., were going to start giving Taiwan like new epic tier stuff, like Abrams tanks and more modern, the most like modern versions of the Apache attack helicopter, the updated versions of the F-16s and HIMARS launchers and stuff. We were going to start that in 2026 and then start rolling the numbers bigger and bigger as we went forward. However, uh, in in light of the Ukraine situation, we have changed that schedule. And this year was going to be year one. This was going to be the first year we started giving them stuff. And we were going to start with HIMARS launchers and Patriots and NASAM systems for air defense and anti-aircraft stuff. However, it turns out we sped up even faster than that because Patriot batteries and NASAM air defense system batteries have actually already been spotted around Taiwan. So it turns out we actually already started giving them some last year and are thus obviously going to be covertly handing them even more this year and each year going forward. This year is the official year when we are going where we now are going to start giving them HIMARS launchers, which they would be able to use to rain death down on the incoming amphibious landing fleet. So we especially with the one with the warheads we developed that explode and spray out 30,000 tungsten balls over a 300-meter radius. It's purely it is purely meant for like a guaranteed incapacitation of like a full size defensive unit, because that spray is going to kill any living person, and the explosive force those tungsten balls are fired with is going to punch through any vehicle's armor, and is going to like shred the treads and the tires of said vehicle. So it's going to render vehicles useless. Uh, and Also, I mean, for landing ships as well, it would kind of puncture their hulls. So there's that. There's that also, and it would shred it would shred the boat's engines, which would render the boats completely immobile. So they couldn't even keep being used after China emptied the boats of the immobilized vehicles and the dead personnel. So this is the year that we, on paper, officially are supposed to start giving them HIMARS. We may already, as seen with the Patriot and the SAM systems, we may already have started handing them some last year, and have them training on them. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if we get indicators about that, or if we get regular, like, official showing indicators that we are giving them HIMARS this year instead and didn't covertly give them any last year. We initially weren't going to give them Abrams tanks until like 2028 or something. Now we are going to start giving them Abrams tanks in large numbers in 2025, potentially being moved up to 2024. They already actually have a few of them. That was also confirmed recently as Taiwanese crews were seen training on Abrams tanks in Taiwan like just a few weeks ago. So they already do actually have some there. So that massive speed up of stuff uh, now clearly puts China in the position of like they no longer it's now not that they will probably do it around 2027. Instead, now it's more like they have to do it before 2027, because by then Taiwan will have been like so thoroughly arms packed by us primarily that the already doomed mass casualty invasion is going to like become a super ultra giga doomed mass casualty invasion. So for that reason, I'm rather confident China's going to do it before 2027. When they started doing the fake out back in like August or September, like I said in the channel post back then, or at least I'm pretty sure I made a channel post about it. I was reasonably confident that they weren't going to do it last year because it would still be too early, and also they would need to do some like covert, repetitive round buildup stuff. So I still think they are probably going to do like I would say 90% chance they're going to do one more fake out. They're going to do another. They're going to use this year, this coming autumn, as another fake out opportunity to practice massing force for the invasion and do some more actual like commandeering and prepping of civilian ferries that they intend to use. And then 2024 is now like the year where I would say that that's the first one where I would really, I would actually like give it a chance of happening. And then once you hit 2025, because that would have been, if they don't do it in 2024, that would have been three fake outs in a row, three prep attempts. Once you get to 2025, that's where I tip over into all right, now it's much more in favor of not being a fourth fake out, and it's probably actually going to be this time. And also, that's getting really close to 2027, and Taiwan will have quite a bit of stuff by then. So yeah, I would still say like heavy chance is not this year. This year they're going to do another fake out to keep prepping some more stuff and practice massing all those vehicles and troops for then embarkment onto a fleet. as and probably do they're going to do another like mass aircraft like practice sortie wave as the aircraft were basically coming in this big arc down like this along Taiwan during those massive like 100 aircraft sorties. They're probably going to practice those again. Probably do a bigger one, like as many as 200 aircraft at once this time, and also do another one of those circlings that they did uh, with their with their two aircraft carriers to have something on the other side of Taiwan. Granted, their aircraft carriers aren't that impressive. They're not real super carriers. They're just regular aircraft carriers. For those who don't know the difference, uh, a regular aircraft carrier is powered by fuel oil, which can only run for like a number of weeks. Because despite having large fuel tanks, obviously the aircraft carrier is very huge and kind of uses a lot of that fuel really quick. So it has to be accompanied by what is literally just a oil tanker, but repurposed to throw hose lines across to an aircraft carrier and refuel it on the go, which makes the group very vulnerable. Which is why it's much better to have super carriers, which are nuclear powered. And the other key difference is regular aircraft carriers can only carry about like 25 to 30 combat aircraft, whereas a super carrier is larger because it's nuclear powered and is thus able to be larger and can carry between 70 and 80 combat aircraft, which is part of the reason why the US is able to force project so massively and so easily, is because we have a total of 20 aircraft carriers, nine of which are regular and 11 of which are super carriers. And then also we have the massive auxiliary fleet of supply stuff that I was mentioning earlier in the first half of the stream before I got not cyber attacked by China. But China now has two functional aircraft carriers. They are just regular ones, and one of them is of Russian design, so it's we've seen how we've seen how Russia's aircraft carriers function, and the answer is they really don't. So that one's not really a concern. They're the actual one that is like Chinese built and maintained. That one is kind of decent in terms of a regular carrier. So they could get like a means of deploying some aircraft from the east side. However, they then face the prospect of getting losing those assets because those are absolutely. Everyone says that Taiwan is going to have its subs silent lurk and like torpedo incoming landing vessels. That is not the case. The first thing Taiwan is going for is those aircraft carriers. Taiwan, like those are as Josh is eternally famous for saying in Call of Duty chat way back in our cringy high school days, those are the gold medal championship target. So those are the very first things Taiwan would be hunting with their subs. All right, no new chat. It looks like those are some of the big obvious ones. Oh, there's also the potential conflict between India and China. And in terms of like how all this interplays with each other, I can't actually, I can literally only answer with I don't know, because again, it depends on timing. So for those who are unaware, there are border disputes between China and India, each country claiming portions of the other. However, that has nothing to do with why a potential like actual conflict would erupt between them. What's really going on is India is in water trouble. Its rivers in the main portion of the country are not enough for the country, for the people themselves, for the industry, for the agriculture. and they are very rapidly depleting their groundwater. So, like, one of the only other things they could do at this point is make a infrastructure project to divert water from the rivers that flow down through eastern India and Bangladesh, coming down off the Himalaya glaciers, divert that over into the Indian heartland. Either that or do a bunch of like desalination plants. However, that's not really an option because those are exorbitantly expensive and consume so much energy that to like replace their water supply or even a decent portion of it with desalination for their population size, India would have to construct and maintain like 4 times as much power generation as they currently do. However, water supply from the east is going to be a problem because China is actually facing a similar issue. Lo and behold, another country of like 1.4 billion people having a similar problem. And they are rapidly depleting their groundwater as well. And a huge chunk of their groundwater, especially in the north, will actually be empty earlier than India's will. A lot of India's groundwater aquifers will bottom out towards 2040. A lot of China's will actually bottom out sooner during the 2030s. And so China has been building a lot of infrastructure stuff along the glacial melt trails and even the big river that flows down into India and Bangladesh there, up in their portion of the mountains, China has built a bunch of diversion infrastructure. At the moment, only diverting some of the water, but eventually they're working on like a massive aqueduct and pipeline system to like pipe and divert that water thousands of kilometers across to different portions of China. And so, I mean, once they complete that they've had delays off and on. At the moment, it's still going to take another number of years. But like once they complete that, or once they get dangerously close to it, that is putting India like seriously at risk, and Bangladesh as well, who India kind of considers themselves like responsible for looking out for. And so, similar to the Egypt and Ethiopia situation, India might find itself, with no other option but to send air sorties up to try to bomb the water pipelines, and bomb the dams and the aqueduct infrastructure that China is constructing. Which China wouldn't just like sit there and watch. Obviously, China would respond with its own air force, and so similar to the Blitz in the 1940s, or also called the Battle of Britain, the massive air war between the UK and Nazi Germany. There could potentially eventually be a large air war between India and China over this region where the water comes down from. So at the end of it, you could see portions of the Himalayas like just littered with scattered combat jet wreckage. And let me make sure. Uh, I just got a text from Josh saying my stream crashed. Was that the old one just delayed? That did my phone just delay telling me, or did my stream crash again? Because OBS says I'm on and YouTube says I'm on. So I just want to wait real quick to see if anybody confirms that I'm still alive. Am I still alive? Can somebody confirm? Okay, there we go. So yeah, that is a potential thing. How it would go for each party depends. I mean, for China's case, it would depend whether they had gone for Taiwan or not, which, given the delays of things, I'm pretty sure Taiwan will occur before then. In which case, that infrastructure likely won't actually end up getting finished because after the Taiwan failure, China is basically going to implode. So there's a huge chance of this one is not in the inevitable category. There's a huge chance that this one won't end up happening. But if it did, it would probably be post Taiwan, after which China will have lost a huge number of its combat jets, and will probably be down on par in numbers with India. China at the moment has about 1,500 worthwhile combat jets. In total, if you look at actual numbers, they have like close to 2,000. However, those numbers include like their ancient, still active MiG 21s and MiG 19s and stuff like that. Worthwhile combat jets, they have about 1,500, and India at present has about 400. So post Taiwan, if this still happened, if China did not implode and the CCP was still in charge and still tried to complete the water infrastructure stuff, China's numbers would be much down, closer to on par with India. And India's own like combat jet numbers would probably be higher, like up towards around 500 or maybe 600 by that point, depending on when it happened. But because of how things are likely to fall out from Taiwan and other stuff, this conflict is not in the inevitable category. All right. So, uh, different region, different stuff. In this case, one that is already happening is Turkey's invasion of Syria. They have not actually started the land invasion portion yet. They have just been repeatedly bombing northern Syria relentlessly. And before the earthquake, during December and January, people were posting videos from southern Turkey of the I forgot what the type of truck is called, but it's a special military truck, like a huge, massive 1 gallon per mile diesel engine thing, who has a giant trailer behind it, whose purpose is to move tanks after they've been offloaded from like a railway to move them to a specific position without having to actually use the tank to move itself. People during December in and January, people in southern Turkey were showing videos online that the government in Ankara tried to silence as quickly as they could, but they were showing videos of like long lines of those trucks bringing Turkish tanks towards the border, towards staging points. So Turkey is still intending on an actual ground invasion. However, that has likely been postponed by the earthquake, as after the international help and Turkey's regular rescue agencies weren't enough, the Turkish government finally gave in and actually deployed military force from the southern border with Syria, where a where we, based on the numbers that then came out, it seems a conspicuously large number of troops were for some reason down here as opposed to at the various bases throughout Turkey where they would normally be. But whatever, what have you, the Turkish government finally gave in and started actually like moving the military into the earthquake zones to try to help with moving stuff and digging people out and things. So the earthquake has likely delayed that for the moment. I would expect for some months at least. Uh, However, they are still intending on that. And the stated goal, the stated reason is to create a 20-mile deep safe zone in quotation marks across the Syrian border. So we would follow the border and be 20 miles into Syria. In reality, we all know that's not where it's going to stop. Just like how, Russia said it was only going to move into Donbass to secure the Donbass region. In reality, they're probably going to go for a big chunk of this behind the river here because that's where a decent portion of Syria's oil is, much of which is not really producing anymore, but it could be restored, which would potentially give Turkey control over a few 100,000 barrels of production, which would shore up their domestic like supply guarantees on top of what they get from Azerbaijan, and on top of the 60 to 100,000 barrels per day that they produce themselves. So that would give them some supply guarantee oil wise. And now, moving on from that, the secret, real reason is their whole Ottoman restoration obsession. Erdogan's kind of made that pretty clear. He's stopped really trying to hide it anymore. And so beyond that, there's going to be quite a few conflicts. The Syria one, like I said, is no longer in the inevitable category. It's in the this is literally already happening category. There is also almost certainly inevitably going to be a conflict between Iran and Turkey because Turkey obviously kind of wants to be the dominant power in the Middle East, and standing in the way of that is Iran and Saudi Arabia. And they have already been constantly fighting proxy battles between each other in Syria and in northern Iraq. And Turkey's like official official like diktat of why things start up is going to be that Iran is oppressing the Azeri people in their northern provinces, and so Turkey is going to um, at least I would expect most likely Turkey is going to be the instigator. They're going to be the ones that start stuff up in the name of liberating the Azeri people from Iranian oppression at some point in the future. Like the Syria stuff is happening right now, and the ground invasion has been delayed by the earthquake, probably for a number of months. When the Turkey versus Iran stuff starts, that's going to be a few more years at least. I wouldn't expect that until like the later 2020s probably. But so that's going to be a thing. And Iran versus Turkey, in the current state of things, especially, Iran's going to lose, and they're going to set Turkey's going to force them to sever off the Azeri provinces, and their Turkey itself is not going to seize them territorially. It's going to say that they go to Azerbaijan. However, Azerbaijan is essentially de facto functionally part of Turkey's like military sphere. So that is the same thing as Azerbaijan will let Turkish troops go anywhere. So then Turkey will be able to have forces here and up here, which will give them a big sweeping like claw around portions of Iraq, which will come into their favor when they inevitably decide to move on Iraq. However, before that, and potentially before the Iran stuff, there's going to be almost certainly a very brief conflict between Greece and Turkey over these islands off the coast of Turkey, as they belong to Greece. However, Turkey has started claiming them and has started constantly, or at least Erdogan in his speeches has started constantly making big boasts about how Turkey will use force to reclaim what is rightfully Turkey's. So, in specifically making that speech when speaking about these islands, so that's something that's coming on the horizon, and that's going to be Turkey's door out of NATO because they don't want to actually leave NATO because in their view that would still kind of look bad in terms of like them just walking away from it. So instead, they're going to get into a conflict with Greece, and uh, when either NATO sides with Greece or NATO refuses, or the rest of NATO refuses to side with either of them specifically, in that case, in Turkey's view, refusing to side with Turkey, which Turkey would view as the correct side. Turkey will use that as their excuse to leave NATO, under like better pretenses for their domestic politics, saying NATO has not chosen the righteous Turkish cause to side with, so therefore we no longer trust them and we're leaving the alliance, which then puts them in a more inconsequential position to start doing whatever they want outside of their inevitable likely attempts to assert control over portions of Iraq, particularly northern Iraq, as uh, in as part of just in concept. Initially, the desire for the Ottoman restoration stuff, but also wanting to, as they've expressed desire to continue rising as a power on the global stage, and part of that power would be asserting control over critical global resources, which will be the long to be around Iraqi oil reserves. And once they try to actually do that, which will most likely not be until the later 2030s or early 2040s, that is when they're actually going to finally get shut down, because doing that is going to bring them into conflict with the US, the majority of NATO, and the standard Happy Eagle coalition, I'll call it, which in to refer to, like, other non-NATO nations that usually come along, like especially Australia, because the Aussies just love a good brawl. Aussies like danger. Aussies like to fight, so they usually show up. They especially the world wars and like World War II. If you look at a lot of like you look at a lot of like under fire footage or in combat footage, you'll see a lot of like the Aussie soldiers have this like have this like crazy psycho smile on, that looks like they're enjoying the danger. So they always show up to stuff like that. But that's the collection of turkey stuff. And then moving over here, and before I bring this up, I will check my chat. Yeah, but remember, things falling apart for a country or for a regime is part of what is also part of what propels them to do stuff like this. Because launching the direct quote, I believe, is "a quick and glorious war" is like one of the only things that, at least throughout history, if the war succeeds, has been like a way to reinvigorate themselves. So there is also a potential conflict oncoming between the Taliban ruled Afghanistan and Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, as several rivers that are used in Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan for their agriculture. You can literally see the agriculture following the river there. The river starts up in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan and flows down through northern Afghanistan. Well, the Taliban has started a map. They've already started the digging, like right at the river. They are digging massive water diversion channels to try to draw water away from the natural flow of the river, to try to create their own agricultural base for Afghanistan, which already is not sitting well with Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. Those two have already spoke out and threatened Kabul about it. So if the Taliban keeps doing that, Afghanistan is potentially going to become the site of another 10,000th conflict of its history, as it might get invaded by Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, or at least the infrastructure might get like mildly bombed. However, the Taliban's kind of like psycho, so they might like then literally like respond to Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan by like actually launching like raids across the border, which would then draw Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan to retaliate against Afghanistan. And I don't think so right off the bat, but there is a chance it might drive them to actually attempt to then seize parts of Afghanistan because this chunk here, following like this ridge up to these green things, that is like primarily inhabited by Uzbeks, none of whom want to be under the rule of the Taliban. None of Afghanistan wants to be under the rule of the Taliban. And this portion right here, following the green, is primarily inhabited by Turkmen people who also don't want to be with the Taliban. So they might actually like go that way if it gets like really hot, but we'll have to see how it goes. Who else do we have, and what were they doing? Right. Potentially, there might potentially end up having to be an actual like direct intervention into Libya this time. For those who are unfamiliar, back in 2011, when the people started protesting Gaddafi, you can watch sad footage of this. But if you're easily disturbed, just be aware it's really disturbing to watch mass amounts of people, especially children, die. He started sending his attack helicopters, and literally were just like using their Vulcan guns or their chain guns or whatever hanging from the underside to just gun down mass amounts of protesters. So all we did in the 2011 intervention was we sortied a bunch of uh, aircraft from Italy and some U.S. and Canadian F-18s from some U.S. carriers in the Mediterranean, and we shot down any attack helicopters that were in the sky, and also blew up most of their tanks that were surrounding and food sieging some of the cities that were like more protesty towards Gaddafi than the others. And we let Libya like settle itself internally, which has turned out to actually not be all that great because Libya is kind of split three ways now. Down in the south here in this corner, it's kind of controlled by not ISIS, but like sort of kind of ISIS, like a the 51st wave of ISIS stuff or whatever break off portion. And then the rest of the country is basically split in half down the middle between an elected government, however corrupt it is. You can argue about that a different day. And in the east here, there is Gaddafi's self appointed successor, one of his former generals, who wants to rule the country solely like as a ruling general, like Gaddafi did. So that is split, and the war keeps like reigniting off and on every couple of years. And every time it does, it interrupts Libya's oil production, which, because of constant damage from the civil war, is only ever able to get back up to like 1.2 million barrels per day, whereas they could maintain as high as a 3 million barrel per day plateau. And given their reserves and how like underutilized they are, they actually could maintain that plateau for one of the longest time periods up until like a bit past the middle of the century. So if things keep going this way, or if the situation like devolves completely again, there is a rising chance this is not in the inevitable category, but it is in the rising chance category. There's a rising chance that there might be an actual like legitimate committed intervention into Libya this time. To I don't even know who this general's name is because in the shadow of the formerly now deposed dictator, like someone who comes up after them. I'm just going to call him General Wannabe. To actually like come in and crush General Wannabe this time, and anybody else who's like with him, and restore Libya to like singularity in terms of government, in terms of governance. Hopefully, go bomb whatever ISIS camps are down in the southwest as well, and allow Libya to restore its like full oil production, and also potentially start developing non-hydrocarbon mineral wealth. As down here and over here, you can kind of see not the long streaks of red, but the clumps, like the very solid blocks of like reddish looking area. Those are where there are large iron deposits. So Libya could also get into that if it wanted to, but that would again require stability. Check my stream like a responsible person. Nothing new. Okay. All right. What else do we have? Oh yeah, Mali is likely going to fall apart. It's potentially going to split in half if the government in Bamako agrees. If not, there's going to be a civil war. It probably won't last that long because Mali's military isn't that impressive. It's basically kind of like Venezuela's military. It consists of guys in camo in jeeps with some AKs and a few RPGs. Uh, there's a there's a massive radical Islamist movement in the north that actually like seized control away from the government back in the early 2010s, and Mali couldn't handle it itself, so it asked France to come in and take care of it. The French came in, they cleaned house, wiped the floor with the guys. Uh, they uh, they they had a few casualties, but in exchange for that, they essentially wiped out the entire militant arm of the movement as it existed at the time. However, the movement has rearisen. It's gotten new members, and it started taking control of northern Mali again. Now Mali has gone like Frenchman bad, and instead wanted Russia and Wagner to come take care of it. And Russia and Wagner, what forces they did send to Mali have proven to be, as Russia has proven themselves on the global stage in Ukraine, horrifically incompetent and not really able to get rid of the Islamist militants. And also, Russia and Wagner have been pulling their personnel out of Mali because they need to keep throwing more bodies into Ukraine. And the one place that Wagner is like actually sticking to, because they're staking their reputation on it, is the Central African Republic. So they're basically abandoning Mali. And after this, Mali has now been appealing to the African Union to send like a coalition of troops from fellow African nations to try to solve their problems for them. And the African Union has actually the African Union has kind of like shunned Mali repeatedly for months now and doesn't look like they're going to do anything. So there's a decent chance Mali might just straight up split. The government of Bamako maybe might just give up the whole Sahara slash Sahel region to the Islamist movement. If not, and no one comes to help them hold the line, then the it's going to return to a civil war and spread into the actual south of the country, which would then start disrupting stuff like gold and what agricultural products they put out and cocoa and stuff. And potentially, because people don't usually want to live under a radical Islamist regime, will cause millions of refugees to flee into neighboring countries like Senegal and Guinea and Cote d'Ivoire, from which they would not stay in Cote d'Ivoire. because Cote d'Ivoire is also not that great. From there, they would probably go over to Kenya or to Ghana, and some of them might even continue all the way to Nigeria, which won't end well on its own. Also, because Nigeria is also in trouble. But that is the likely upcoming fate of Mali. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. Nigeria is at risk. I put it in the low risk category for potential internal civil conflict. However, the risk is there. Previously, I would not have said so up until the last few years, but it's starting. They're starting to really look like it. Not as bad as in Ethiopia, but that they have started to see like actual inter ethnic group like acts of mass violence and massacres starting to come up. So there's a risk that Nigeria could have a internal destabilization and start to fragment along at least the three primary ethnic lines. But that's not like a guarantee. Again, I put that at low risk because they have drifted that way before a couple times over the decades since their independence, and they have managed to like not fully devolve down that far, at least in the immediate term. However, if you add another decade or two to it, then it's going to quickly tip over into much higher likelihood because then you're going to be dealing with Nigeria's drastic overpopulation problem by that point, the government's inability to acquire and provide resources, and the corruption problems within their government of the resources that they are able to afford and acquire, government officials like directing more of those resources towards their own specific ethnic groups than towards the others equally, then that could cause it to fire up. And then over here, we have Ethiopia, where stuff has their civil war has been put on pause for the moment. They've reached a ceasefire. The government in Addis Ababa with the separatist forces in Tigray. However, uh, inter like violence between the major ethnic groups and tribes has sprung up all over the country now, especially within Oromia, Ethiopia's like biggest group. There's now been like tons of massacres, sometimes hundreds of people at a time, of non-Oromi people being committed by the Oromia people, and other like similar massacres in the other states by the dominant ethnic groups there. So the fracture of Ethiopia has entered the high likelihood category, with the primary breakers, like the most likely to completely separate, being Tigray and uh, Amara and Afar. Basically, a trio of states up here in this corner up here would be the most likely like chunk to break away. Uh, Addis Ababa has made it clear that they're going to fight against that. So if they start going towards that again, uh, with not just Tigray but the other two this time, then that's going to become a even worse civil war than the last one, in which I think our estimates are that over the 3 years since late 2020 was when it started, and uh, it was it late, yeah, late 2020 until late last year. Okay, so actually that was 2 years. Over the 2 years it lasted for, around 100,000 to 200,000 people were killed in Tigray by conflict itself. Uh, a, a chunk of those being like actual combatants on both sides. However, another chunk being people that just got mass executed. And then also as many as 1 to 2 million people also starved to death because the conflict just cut off all delivery of like food resources and medicine and stuff. So since I think it is very likely when it flares up again and goes to like multiple regions this time, that situation is going to be much worse than the last one and is going to be a much larger mass death event, possibly like 5 million people plus over a couple of years when the next time it starts up happens. Check chat as a responsible streamer. South Africa. South Africa depends how they handle things. And their history of handling things has been not really good. For anyone who's new and not aware, South Africa's power grid has degraded to such a point now that they are constantly like without power for between 6 to 12 hours of the day on a daily basis now within the country. And that is dangerous for their national income and for their position in the world, as that power includes power to the mining operations. And South Africa is a critical supplier, a linchpin supplier of numerous things, platinum group metals being the biggest, also chromium. They supply something like a third of the world's chromium, which is critical for steel, and about a 15% of the world's manganese as well, along with various other things like fluorspar, which we need to refine aluminum out of bauxite ore. So South Africa has gotten worse and worse. The mixture is a combination of their primary power provider across the country is in massive debt and keeps dedicating money to pay off its debt instead of taking on additional debts and using that money to at least repair the power provision infrastructure so that it can provide power more adequately and thus recollect more money that it can then use to pay off its debt. Instead, it's just throwing the money to try to pay off its debt and leaving the infrastructure like unrepaired. And a lot of that debt and lack of money to repair infrastructure comes from horrific mismanagement of the company from the like CEOs and board members who have just funneled the company's money away into their own bank accounts, into their own families' bank accounts. And the way the government in South Africa has quote unquote handled the problem has been presidents constantly firing firing in quotation marks, firing whoever's in charge, putting someone new in charge, saying they're going to fix the problem. However, the new person they put in charge is one of their own buddies, one of their best friends, who then the president ignores the complaints of while their best friend funnels away the company's money into their own bank account. Then the president pretends to care a year or two later, fires that person, appoints another one of his best friends to the company, who then funnels all the company's money away into his own bank account. And they've just rinsed and repeated this over and over and over, which is why which is why a lot of South Africans uh, a lot of South Africans are becoming quickly apathetic because uh, they uh, they they're readily convinced by evidence, obviously, that it, it even if they vote somebody out and someone from the like some complete opposite like side in, it's not actually going to change anything because they're all just following the same modus operandi. And so that's left the company without without money. And like I said, the little money it does earn, it is instead of using to repair like their ancient infrastructure, It just uses that to pay off its debts, and also uh, it costs way more for them to supply their coal plants. A lot of their power generation is done by coal plants, and instead of a normal country, I will show you what a normal country does. Our power plant, for example, back up home in Fairbanks. Excuse me, zoom in, please. I didn't ask you to give me a pop up, I asked you to zoom in. A normal coal fired power plant has the railway will come right beside it, like right to its coal conveyor and stuff, and bring train cars full of coal that then gets offloaded right into the plant. Like you will see here, it still doesn't show the new power plant. This image is really old. So this is still the old power plant. But you see the rail cars with coal here, the railway comes right in, right to the offloading portion of the power plant. That is how a proper power plant operates. However, in South Africa, you can look up stuff like South Africa power plant coal trucks or something. In South Africa, the power plants were not built near the rail lines, nor were rail extensions made to the power plants. Instead, the railways come up to places like within a few miles, but then the coal has to get removed from the rail cars, put into big, huge haul trucks, and driven by those trucks for a number of miles over to the power plant. As basically a backdoor like deal that was made between government officials a while ago and their buddies in the trucking industry, so that said trucking industry would have like basically eternal contracts with the to constantly make money of with the power company, and so that makes the situation even worse and even more unmanageable, and it's all spiraling out of control. And uh, if you're unaware, apart from needing a lot of fuel, obviously for the large vehicles, mining operations also use a lot of electricity, and so the absence of that power for 6 to 12 hours a day is really wearing on their mining operations. And a lot of the mining operations obviously do have like big giant diesel generators they can turn to. However, those don't have an infinite fuel supply. They can't run infinitely, and the more they have to rely on them, the more money the mine has to spend fueling them. And so their mining output is being really damaged by this power mismanagement, which is leading to them getting less national revenue, which is leading to them having less money to give to the power company to keep things afloat, which then creates a feedback loop which keeps lowering their output of mining and industry, which lowers their national income, which lowers the amount of money they can give to the power company to keep it afloat. And the cycle has been building like that for like a decade and a half at this point, to where it has gotten so bad now that the country is now blacking out for 6 to 12 hours a day, depending on how bad the given situation is on a given day. So if South Africa keeps spiraling like that, uh, it's the outside world is going to have to at least try to bail it out in several ways. However, if that doesn't work and South Africa like crumbles internally and like violence and stuff breaks out and they're unable to really contain it on their own, as their military hasn't proven to be the best, then there's a chance. I don't put it in the high chance category, but it is actually on the list now. It's in the low chance category, but it is on the list of things that could happen. There could actually be some kind of intervention required in South Africa if things really deteriorate that far. Even just for the sake of ensuring the constant supply of chromium, manganese, and platinum group metals and fluorspar out of the country to the outside world because it is such a critical supplier of those. Uh, that's actually a good question. As I think a lot of I think a deal of Botswana stuff does go out through South Africa. Like half of their national revenue literally comes from one diamond mine. But the export like the export pathway goes down through South Africa. Even though they could send it down the Zambezi River, they don't really trust Zambia, Zimbabwe, or Mozambique to not lift some stuff from their exports if they send it down the Zambezi River. So if I remember correctly, most of Botswana's stuff gets sent out through South Africa. They could resort to just sending stuff out by air freight, I guess, if they had to. That would be a bit pricier, but for things as pricey as diamonds, that wouldn't be that much of an issue. And then we come to the potential, what I call environmental coalition interventions, which would also have other motives behind them, but the fronted motivation given to the national publics of participating nations would be that it's for the sake of the environment, in which as the phrase usually goes, coalition of the willing may at some point, a few decades from now, start doing interventions into nations with remaining decent chunks of forest cover, especially rainforest cover, where huge amounts of deforestation are taking place, like, for example, the Congo, in order to, and stopping the deforestation would be one of the goals. There would just be other goals stacked on top of that. But the publicized goal would be to preserve the rainforest integrity. So interventions might eventually start be take be be might start getting implemented on an environmental basis, not in the immediate future, but like a couple decades from now, when things are really plummeting downhill. One of the main areas that would probably see that is the Congo, not just because they are wantonly deforesting their area. You can see this chunk here where it looks like weird grayish brown now. That used to be rainforest, along with this chunk here and these portions that look like cut out of the middle. So the Congo would likely be a place to see that to stop that deforestation, as well as also to secure a guaranteed supply to the outside world of cobalt, copper, tantalum, and other various critical metals that are mined in the south of the Congo, whose supply has been disrupted by their internal five-sided civil war in the past. When it got really bad back in, I think, the 80s, and it was like all over the country, those supplies got disrupted, and cobalt went up to its highest prices ever at like $300 a kilo. Recently, back in I think 2017, the Civil War got really bad and went down and actually was disrupting the mines, and that sent cobalt up to like over $100 a kilo again for the first time in decades. So whenever the Civil War spreads down to the south and starts disrupting the mines, then you see price spikes for various metals, cobalt and tantalum especially. But Congo is where you could potentially see one of those. Much less likely Brazil, because a favorable government is now in charge of the country again. However, that could always change. But you can see here the chunks of the where it meets there and is that light green. up to that leading edge. That's where the rainforest used to be. So you can see the chunks of the Amazon that have been lost. However, to my joy, Lula, the new president of Brazil, slash also the old president of Brazil, because he was president before, has actually wasted no time and has literally deployed the Brazilian military to start mass shutdown by force of deforestation operations, whether they be logging or whether they be ranchers burning down the forest to expand their ranch land for their cattle. He has actually like gotten right to it in shutting down the deforestation and in other words, giving the Brazilian military something to do after having nothing to do but exist for the last 80 years since they got to participate in World War II. That was their last real like thing that they got to do. So he's actually now given the Brazilian military something to do, so they won't be as bored anymore, and is stopping the Amazon deforestation. If the Brazilian government were to change and the deforestation were to like revamp itself, then a intervention in the style of Congo might end up happening there as well, which would also, carry the subcontext of securing tin and niobium supplies and stuff. In Colombia, if Colombia keeps up with its deforestation, and Bogota is not able to stop it on its own, because Bogota is basically directly answerable to Washington, to the U.S. Uh, and we have kept telling Bogota to like use your military if you have to, but stop deforesting everything. And they have so far proven inadequate at doing so. So not with any like push against them, like not with any like government directed stuff. There's a chance that in the future, like in a couple decades, uh, we might like do something in Colombia, uh, just because not because they're not attempting to do anything, but just because they seem repeatedly unable to do anything about it. Really, they don't seem to have the capacity to stop it all that well. So that would only be if that continues going on there. Uh, Doing stuff in Brazil would depend on if the Brazilian government changes over again to a much less favorable one. And there is a potential that something might happen in Myanmar. The civil war there, similar to the one in the Congo, has been ongoing for like 50 years, and the outside world has not really cared. Because although Myanmar, topologically and geologically, does clearly have the potential to contain vast amounts of oil, especially when British explorers like first went in there in the late 1800s and stuff. There were numerous areas where just like in Texas and Louisiana and parts of Pennsylvania back in the early 1900s, there were areas where oil was literally actually like seeping up through the ground. So there is clearly something there in Myanmar. However, it's never really been worth pursuing because A, the Civil War, B, China's right there and kind of would get a bit touchy if anyone else was going into Myanmar. And also, during the 50s and 60s, all the giga gigantic fields and stuff were found in the Persian Gulf and in North Africa. So that kind of negated the need for exploration and development anywhere else. And so a lot of stuff, Myanmar included, got like ignored for a while. And it was being unignored in the late 2000s and early 2010s under higher oil prices. They were going to drill some new exploration wells in there. However, then once you hit the mid 2010s and the later 2010s, the civil war flared up to like full scale again, and the oil companies immediately fled the country because they don't want to be caught in the middle of that. And so Myanmar's kind of been left like that. However, um, potentially, again, I'm going to put this in the medium tier, maybe. Potentially, uh, the outside world might go into Myanmar eventually after China has their Taiwan face plants and internal, buckling implosion. Once they're no longer like a worry about issue, the outside world might actually venture into Myanmar to finally shut the civil war down. Because Myanmar, similar to Venezuela, doesn't really have a military. They have a couple of combat jets. Unlike Venezuela's, theirs are actually still functional. However, they basically, in terms of parts and new stuff, they rely on free handouts from Russia, and Russia's not really going to be in a position to be doing that anymore very soon. So the reason they've kept the rebel forces back at bay for so long is because they've always maintained a few combat jets and basically just like bomb huge amounts of the jungle where they think the rebels are, which usually kills the rebels and also kills like thousands of villagers that just live out there trying to live their lives. So the Myanmar government also has like a massive body count in the hundreds of thousands from indiscriminate bombings. But after the China thing is out of the like responding question, there is a chance people might go into Myanmar to put down the civil war and start trying to like bring about its potential oil production, which it's always had but has never really been able to pursue. Uh, Before the civil war really erupted in like the 60s and 70s, they were able to actually get up to like 50 or 60,000 barrels a day. They were just starting to climb up like that. However, then it all fell apart because the Civil War started and their production collapsed down to basically nothing. However, they have occasionally managed to keep a couple thousand barrels per day going, but it's never really been that impressive. Uh, Indonesia, there's a small chance they might eventually give up on holding on to West Papua. Although at the moment, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to keep it, just because of how prolific resource-wise Papua New Guinea has proven to be in terms of metals and minerals. Just not a lot of it is being actually mined yet. Uh, so the same prolificacy probably continues into West Papua, and for that reason, I'd assume Indonesia is probably going to try to hold on to it for as long as possible. However, as Indonesia eventually starts facing many other issues and pressures, like especially pressure to from the outside world to stop the deforestation, and they eventually have to start dedicating their military to that, they're going to start losing their grip on West Papua, and there's a low to medium chance they might end up having to let it go, and we might end up seeing a reunification of the full Papua Island. But we'll have to see how that goes to as the future comes forward to end up finding out how it all turns out. Check my chat like a responsible streamer, and nothing new actually. All right, I think that's close to the end of the list. I just check some other stuff as there's not much else that based on things of the moment and things that I can foresee revolving around like how things are going to go as stuff as time moves forward. There's not much else it looks like that I can immediately see becoming a thing. The only other thing that might pop up is a confrontation between Morocco and Algeria, as the two of them have started to start flaring at each other recently, as Algeria supports the Western Sahara separatists, aka the actual Western Sahara people and the actual Western Saharan government. Uh, whereas Morocco invaded and has been occupying Western Sahara since, I believe, the 80s. It may have been the 70s, similar to China still occupying Tibet. So something might flare up between them, as they also have a number of disputes with each other. And they Algeria wants to be the more dominant power in the North African region, as Egypt has the numbers and theoretically has the bulk of military equipment, but Egypt has proven themselves to not really be going in all that well of a direction. So Algeria uh, is wanting to kind of step into that gap and be the predominant North African face that the world deals with when dealing with North Africa. And for that, they would kind of have to boot Morocco off the stage. And they also, as their oil reserves are gradually depleting and their domestic consumption is increasing as they economically grow, they're going to have gas for a while. And they do likely share in some of Libya's large iron reserves down in some of those areas, and potentially some uranium down in their far south, where they share that span of stuff with Niger. They would also like, as just a political measure, since they're trying to help Western Sahara with their independence, they would like to have a grateful, independent Western Sahara. You know, quote unquote, not really, but kind of beholden to them, so that they would have some political leverage and control over Western Sahara's portion of the vast phosphate rock reserves that span from uh, from like Senegal up through Western Sahara and Morocco. The densest and largest concentration being in Morocco, but a huge chunk of that also extending into Western Sahara. So if Western Sahara were to break free with Algeria's help, Algeria fighting Morocco on its own front and also giving much better arms and assistance to Western Sahara, then uh, Western Sahara would be free and would control those very valuable and going to become much more valuable fertilizer enabling exports on its own, and would be in a position of debt and gratitude to Algeria, which would have Algeria in a de facto position of power and control over those. So that's something that might erupt. I'm still keeping that in the low probability category, though. And something I almost forgot about, in the future, in a post implosion China, whatever kind of government reemerges in the CCP's place, whether it's a reformed, less CCP version of the CCP, uh, or it's a totally different kind of fascist or totalitarian regime, or even whether it's a like democratic regime. In China's like internal turmoil, Tibet will finally get to break off, and so will Uyghur, which China calls Xinjiang over there in the Taklamakan region. Everyone keeps drawing, uh, everyone keeps drawing, basically warlord shattered China, and also like constantly makes unrealistic maps where every portion of Russia breaks away and becomes a country. Where, as I have showed you guys before, that's just not how it works anymore. And the most likely in Russia's case, at least, fracture line would be something close to this. Like the four that would legitimately like break away as independent ethno states are Chechnya, Dagestan, Tatarstan, and Bashkiri. And then there's a huge likelihood that Russia is going to split down the middle, or not necessarily the middle, somewhere close to like the Ob River. I think would be like just a general place to place it, as in a huge chunk of Siberia would end up breaking off because not just the ethnic Siberian peoples, but also, as I have been told by Russian friends who are from the east of Russia, the east like just flat out despises quote unquote proper Russia or the Russian heartland, like to levels that regular Russian heartland Russians really don't want to believe. And they've plenty of them have flat out admitted if the breakaway chance comes that they'd be for it. Partly because they think it's just going to happen anyways, but not as a independence movement, but more as a Russia falling apart thing. And then within that, there is also a likelihood of Buryatia and Tuva separating as ethnic republics. But those I'm not as entirely sure about as the four over here. In China's case, it's not going to fragment into like a million warlord states. In reality, if China split, what would happen is basically Tibet and Uyghur would break off, and that would be about it. And then there would just be bulk China, and also Hong Kong city state, similar to the manner in which Singapore exists. But that's it. In terms of like states breaking off from China, you'd have a three-way split. Um, Whatever government comes back in place of the CCP would probably realize it has nothing to like grapple with in terms of Tibet, and would probably just leave Tibet be, because there's not too much to grab from it either. However, no matter what type of government it is, there is a huge probability that they would eventually invade and try to reclaim Xinjiang or Uyghur, just because the Taklamakan and Uyghur region is just so it's so fossil hydrocarbon dense, it's so mineral and metal ore dense, it's so dense in terms of like critical and valuable resources that while they would almost certainly leave Tibet forever, uh, Beijing, in whatever new emergent government comes about, is almost certainly not going to be able to ignore Uyghur breaking off because they're just going to desperately want control over those resources so much. If not even for like political leverage, just for their sheer economic value. And if Uyghur like breaks off, there is a chance of like parts of it that are Kyrgyz and Tajik and Kazakh, like trying to reunite with Kazakhstan. However, the three of them might not really be willing to accept that because they won't want to have to deal with even a greatly weakened China, because even a greatly weakened China would still have numbers of bodies it could throw. Although doing so wouldn't be a wise decision, but then Russia doing so isn't a wise decision, and Russia is doing that. Uh, so there's that. And then there's also, like I said earlier and almost forgot about, the Tajikistan Kyrgyzstan conflict, which is over. You can see a set of different like valleys and stuff that are awkwardly cut from each other and in between each other. So each wants to like seize those, and the other keeps saying no. And so those two basically want to go at it and settle this with guns. However, they keep having, previously Russia, back when everyone thought Russia was like a legitimate military power in regards to stuff other than just having nukes. And now, in Russia's absence, it's China who keeps bopping them on the head and telling them to stop, because China doesn't want something like that happening right on its own borders, because that would potentially cause a refugee crisis. And China is really xenophobic. That's been some of other that's been some of the other angles of Xi Jinping's speeches. Is he's like straight up talked about wanting to create an ethnically pure China. So you know, and you know what people mean when they start giving those speeches. They mean, Uyghur people in the Xinjiang region going into re-education camps that they went into by the hundreds of thousands and millions in 2013 and 14 and have just mysteriously never re-emerged from, even though it's almost been a decade. They're not dead, guys. They're just learning important things. They're not dead. They're not death camps. They're just re-education camps. You know, Xi Jinping said so. Why would we not believe him? China has now taken Russia's place in bopping those two whenever they start up. However, after China does their own face plants with Taiwan and starts their own internal buckling, there's going to be no one left who cares enough to try to bop Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan when they go at it. And so eventually, uh, late 2020s, probably maybe more into the 2030s, you're going to finally see Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan actually go all out on each other. And they're actually kind of evenly matched. So it's most likely going to be sort of a stalemate. That's if no one else intervenes, like if Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan do nothing, it will probably just end with mass death and Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan just agreeing to trade valleys with each other, since that's what the fight's about. After losing a bunch of people that they didn't need to, it might settle out sooner if like Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan intervenes or both. Maybe they might actually like take up a bapping position, bopping on the head position. So actually, that might not get a chance to go full scale, but there's a huge chance that it will. So that's something that's going to happen. And I'm pretty sure that's the end of the list. So I will check chat now. Uh, if if Iran legitimately like if they think Iran like does straight up have nukes or is about to, then yes, Israel doesn't care about like outward approval. People keep like calling them a puppet state of the U.S., but that is not the case. They do not ask our permission for doing stuff. Like if you guys trust me on a lot of things, trust me on that at least. They don't ask permission for any things. They just start bombing people. Like they did not ask before like doing any of their bombings in Damascus recently. They don't actually care about permission. Even if no one else was going to, yes, they would act against Iran on their own. In that regards, though, when the Turkey-Iran war eventually starts, Israel will probably take the opportunity to join in and conduct airstrikes on Iran alongside Turkey, just if for no other reason than to make sure Iran is like shattered and in terms of its strength and can't re-arise as the nuke desiring power that it has been for a while. And then uh, the only real threats that Israel would have to worry about in the immediate future, that's a threat that's actually worth anything, would be Turkey itself, because Egypt off and on hasn't liked Israel. However, all Egypt really has going for it is mass of force, as in like raw numbers, and Israel has modern weapons, so that's not really an issue. And then, like, the only other power then in the region is Saudi Arabia. However, Saudi Arabia is going to be having its own internal issues, and also Saudi Arabia isn't interested in fighting a war with Israel or really with anybody else. Saudi Arabia's primary interest is something called money. the Saudis love money. They they literally like they have you've heard about the line. They want to build a 70-mile long, 200-meter wide, 500-meter tall skyscraper. And to do it, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia paid a $500 billion, yes, that is a $500 billion contract out of the government treasury to the construction company, which he owns most of the shares of. So he literally took $500 billion and paid himself $500 billion of the Saudi government money uh, to have his company ultimately not even construct what's supposed to be constructed. Not that such a thing could be constructed. And I don't know if you guys have seen their newest, most ridiculous thing, but they have a new ridiculous thing. Riyadh uh, Cube, I guess, is the thing. They want to construct a giant a giant. You see the buildings here. They want to construct a giant, like kilometer by kilometer by kilometer cube, and have and like shove millions of people to live into it. And instead of silver, this one they want to line the outside with gold to shine golden in the sun. So yeah, there you go. That's a that's a quick insight into the Saudi government's mentality and what their priorities are. They don't care about going to war with Israel or Iran or anybody. They care about money and trying to do the most absurd things to flash their money at the rest of the world. So you guys thought the line was bad. Well, now we have the cube, which is also never actually going to exist, mind you. But it is a thing that they want to try to do. But anyways, that is basically the end of the list. Then, with the exception of maybe India intervening somewhat in the collapse of Pakistan, but they probably wouldn't risk that because Pakistan has a few nukes, and if any like rampant party in there wants to use them, India doesn't want to risk that. But yeah, that's basically the end of it for this stream. Thankfully, it looks like it's going to come out shorter than most of the others. I both parts of it will be up in video form, and I'll retitle them appropriately later on. But I'm starting to get really hungry now, so I'm going to leave to eat soon. But thank you everybody for showing up. I'm loving the double-digit viewer numbers. I know it's going to go back down to only like five uh, on the second stream later this week because I'm doing a rare second stream. But said second stream is just going to be me. Uh, it's going to be the follow-up stream to my photography showcase since during the first one I only got to show like 10,000 out of my 20,000 shots that I've taken over my course of doing photography. So that's going to be a photography showcase stream later this week. So I know that's only going to end up having like five people, but I expect that, so I won't be too damaged by it. But that will be going on. Um, Maybe Thursday, but maybe not. I might have to move it to Friday, but that will also depend on Josh's schedule over on Twitch. And I'll put a post about that when the time comes for it. But otherwise, that's the end of this one. So thank you everybody who showed up. Thank you Nebraska for giving me the $5 earlier that I don't deserve. But that's going to be it for now then. So I will see you all around.